Gervonta Tank sees childhood friend begging for money. His reaction was shocking. It was a crisp autumn morning in Baltimore when Gervonta Tank Davis was driving his Rolls-Royce through the familiar streets of his old neighborhood. The leaves were turning golden, and the morning sun cast long shadows across the cracked sidewalks of West Baltimore. Despite his success as a boxing champion, Tank often returned to these streets, remembering where his journey began. The smell of breakfast from Miss Jenny's corner store mixed with the urban morning air, bringing back memories of his childhood days when he'd stopped there before heading to the gym. At a red light near Pennsylvania Avenue, something caught his eye. A thin figure in worn-out clothes was holding a cardboard sign, asking for help. Tank's heart nearly stopped when he recognized the face. It was Marcus Johnson, his childhood friend from the Upton Boxing Center. The same kid who used to spar with him, share dreams of becoming champions, and watch his back in the tough streets of Baltimore. Tank pulled over, his mind flooding with memories. He remembered how Marcus had been equally talented in the ring, maybe even more promising. They had trained together under Coach Calvin Ford, pushing each other to be better. The countless hours they spent throwing combinations, the shared dreams they whispered between rounds, the promises they made to escape the hardships of their neighborhood. It all came rushing back. As he watched Marcus through the tinted windows, Tank recalled their last conversation 8 years ago. Marcus had just lost his mother to cancer and had to quit boxing to take care of his younger siblings. That was the last time Tank had seen him, until now. He remembered how Marcus had tried to keep training while working 2 jobs, how he'd show up to the gym with dark circles under his eyes, until finally, the weight of responsibility became too heavy to bear. The light turned green, and cars behind Tank started honking, but he remained still, gripping the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles turning white. Through the window, he could see Marcus's embarrassment when people passed by, how he tried to hide his face when someone recognized him. Tank knew that feeling, the pride that comes with being from these streets, and how hard it must be for Marcus to stand there asking for help. Marcus looked different now. His once muscular frame had become lean and weathered, his confident stance replaced by a subtle stoop. The cardboard sign in his hands trembled slightly in the morning breeze. Need help, any blessing appreciated. The sight struck Tank deep in his chest, remembering how they used to joke about whose face would be on the boxing magazines first. Without hesitation, Tank made a decision. He pulled into a nearby parking lot, his mind racing with thoughts about fate, success, and responsibility. As he stepped out of his car, he noticed several people had started recording with their phones. Some recognized him, whispering and pointing. But Tank's focus remained fixed on his old friend. This wasn't about creating a viral moment or showing off his success. This was about brotherhood and remembering where you came from. The morning, air felt heavy with anticipation as Tank walked toward Marcus. Each step brought back another memory. Their first sparring session, shared dreams of championship belts, late-night talks about escaping the streets. Marcus hadn't noticed him yet, his eyes cast downward as another car passed without stopping. Tank could see the weight of life's hardships in his old friend's posture. But he also remembered the fighter within, the same fighter who had once been his strongest competition in the gym. Marcus's eyes widened with recognition as Tank approached, a mix of emotions flashing across his weathered face. Shock, shame, and something deeper that spoke of years of unspoken struggles. He quickly lowered the cardboard sign, his hands trembling slightly as he tried to compose himself. The morning traffic continued to flow around them, creating a strange bubble of silence in the midst of urban chaos. Tank, man, Marcus started, his voice cracking with emotion. But before he could finish, Tank stepped forward and embraced him tightly. The gesture caught Marcus off guard, and for a moment, he stood rigid before finally returning the hug. Some passers-by had stopped to record the moment on their phones, but neither man seemed to notice. 8 years, brother. 8 long years, Tank said, stepping back to look at his friend properly. Up close, the toll of hard times was even more evident. Marcus's face bore new lines, and his eyes carried a weariness that hadn't been there in their youth. His clothes, though clean, were worn and thin, barely adequate for the autumn chill. I didn't want you to see me like this, Marcus admitted, gesturing vaguely at himself and the sign he'd dropped. Been following your career, Watching all your fights. You made it, Tank. You really made it. There was no bitterness in his voice, just genuine pride mixed with profound sadness. Tank glanced at the growing crowd of onlookers and gently guided Marcus toward his car. Come on, let's get some breakfast. Miss Jenny still makes those breakfast sandwiches we used to love. Marcus hesitated, looking back at his spot on the street corner. Your corner can wait, brother. We need to talk. Inside Miss Jenny's, the familiar smell of bacon and coffee wrapped around them like a warm blanket. The small diner hadn't changed much. The same cracked leather booths, the same yellowing photos of local heroes on the walls, including a younger Tank with his first championship belt. Miss Jenny herself, now with more gray in her hair, nearly dropped her coffee pot when she saw them walk in. Lord have mercy, if it ain't my two troublemakers, she exclaimed, hurrying over to hug them both. Marcus Johnson, where you been hiding yourself? The question hung awkwardly in the air until Tank smoothly ordered their old usual, double breakfast sandwiches with extra bacon and black coffee. As they settled into a booth away from the windows, Marcus finally began to open up. He told Tank about the years after his mother's death, how taking care of his siblings had meant working multiple jobs, how he'd tried to keep up with boxing while working as a warehouse worker and night security guard, how his younger sister had gotten sick, requiring expensive treatments that drained what little savings he had. The hardest part wasn't giving up boxing, Marcus confessed, staring into his coffee. It was watching the dream die, day by day. Watching you rise while I... He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Tank listened intently, his own success suddenly feeling heavy on his shoulders. Remember what Coach Ford used to say? Tank asked, leaning forward. The fight ain't over till the last bell rings. And brother, you ain't heard no bell yet. Marcus looked up, meeting Tank's intense gaze. The determination in Tank's eyes was familiar. It was the same look he got before a big fight. I appreciate the words, Tank, but this ain't something you can fix with a few dollars and some motivation, Marcus said quietly. My life, it's complicated. Tank's response was immediate and firm. Good thing I ain't offering just dollars and motivation then. I'm offering you a chance to rewrite your story, brother. Just like Coach Ford gave us both all those years ago. Tank pulled out his phone and made a quick call, speaking in low tones while Marcus finished his breakfast. The diner had filled up with the morning crowd, many trying to discreetly take photos of the boxing champion and his companion. Miss Jenny kept the curious onlookers at bay, protecting the privacy of her two former regulars with the same fierce devotion she'd shown when they were teenagers. Here's what's going to happen, Tank said, putting his phone down. I just spoke with Coach Ford. The gym's grown since you left. We've got a whole youth program now, teaching kids from the neighborhood. We need someone who knows what these streets can do to a kid. Someone who's lived it. He paused, letting the words sink in. The position comes with a salary, benefits, and an apartment above the gym. Marcus set his coffee cup down slowly, his hands shaking slightly. Tank, I don't know what to say, but my siblings... Your sister Keisha's still in college, right? And James is finishing high school? Tank interrupted. When Marcus nodded, Tank continued. The apartment's got 3 bedrooms. It's all part of the deal. Plus, we'll make sure Keisha's tuition is covered. This ain't charity, Marcus. This is an investment in someone I know has value. The morning, light streaming through the diner's windows caught the tears welling up in Marcus's eyes. Why? He managed to ask. Why do all this for me? Tank leaned back, his expression serious. Remember that day in the gym when I was ready to quit? After losing my 3rd amateur fight? You spent hours working with me, fixing my footwork, adjusting my combinations. You told me I had greatness in me, even when I couldn't see it myself. Well, I'm just returning the favor, brother. Because that greatness, it's still in you. Miss Jenny appeared with fresh coffee, pretending not to notice as Marcus wiped his eyes. You boys need anything else? She asked softly, her own eyes glistening with emotion as she watched the scene unfold. Actually, yeah, Tank replied. We need you to witness something. He pulled out his phone again, this time opening his banking app. Marcus, I'm transferring enough to cover any immediate debts you've got. But this is a one-time thing. The real opportunity is at the gym. You've got to be there Monday morning, 6 a.m. sharp, ready to work. Coach Ford's expecting you. Marcus stared at the phone screen, then at Tank, his expression a mix of gratitude and determination. I won't let you down, he said firmly. Not this time. I know you won't, Tank responded. Because this time, you're not carrying the weight alone. Remember what Coach always said about family? Marcus smiled for the first time that morning. A genuine smile that briefly erased the years of hardship from his face. Family fights together, he quoted. And family lifts each other up. Tank finished. He turned to Miss Jenny, who was still hovering nearby. Miss Jenny, mark this down. Today's the day Marcus Johnson starts his comeback story. The older woman beamed, pulling out her order pad. Already done, sugar. And your breakfast is on the house, both of you. Consider it my investment in this comeback. As they stood to leave, the other diners broke into spontaneous applause. Marcus straightened his shoulders, standing taller than he had in years. Tank noticed the change immediately. The fighter's stance was returning, along with something else. Hope. The drive to Upton Boxing Center was filled with a charged silence. Both men lost in their thoughts as they passed through the familiar streets of West Baltimore. Tank's Rolls-Royce turned heads as it rolled through the neighborhood, but his attention was on Marcus, who sat straighter with each block they got closer to their old training ground. The gym looked different from what Marcus remembered. Bigger, more professional, with a fresh coat of paint and new signage. But the sound that greeted them when Tank opened the door was wonderfully familiar. The rhythm of jump ropes hitting the floor, the staccato percussion of speed bags, and the grunt of fighters working the heavy bags. Coach Calvin Ford was in the ring, working with a young fighter who couldn't have been more than 15. He stopped mid-instruction when he saw them enter, a broad smile spreading across his weathered face. Well, look what Tank dragged in, he called out, ducking through the ropes. The entire gym seemed to pause as the veteran trainer crossed the floor to embrace Marcus. 8 years too long, son, Coach Ford said, holding Marcus at arm's length to look him over. But you're home now. That's what matters. He turned to address the gym, his voice carrying authority that commanded attention. Listen up, everyone. This here is Marcus Johnson. Some of you old-timers might remember him. For those who don't, this man right here was one of the best natural talents I've ever seen in this gym. And starting Monday, he's joining our team as a trainer. The announcement was met with respectful nods and scattered applause. A few of the older fighters came over to welcome Marcus, remembering him from years before. Tank watched as his friend gradually relaxed, the familiar environment working its magic. Let me show you what we've built here, Coach Ford said, leading them on a tour. The gym had expanded significantly, now including a study area for young fighters to do homework, a small medical office, and the promised apartment upstairs. We're not just building champions in the ring anymore, Ford explained. We're building futures. As they walked, Marcus's eyes kept drifting to the training area. Tank noticed and smiled. Go ahead, he said, nodding toward the speed bag. Show these kids you still got it. Marcus hesitated only briefly before stepping up to the speed bag. His first few hits were tentative, but muscle memory took over quickly. Soon he had found his rhythm, the familiar rat-tat-tat echoing through the gym. Young fighters stopped their workouts to watch, impressed by the newcomer's skill. Still got that timing, Coach Ford nodded approvingly. It never really leaves you, does it? Marcus's response was a smile that reached his eyes. The first, genuine one Tank had seen since their reunion. The tour ended in what would be Marcus's new apartment. It was simple, but clean, with basic furniture already in place. Your sister Keisha can have her own room when she's home from college, Tank explained, and James can finish his senior year at the local high school. Everything's arranged. Marcus walked to the window, looking out over the neighborhood. From this vantage point, he could see the street corner where Tank had found him just hours ago. The contrast wasn't lost on him. I don't know how I'll ever repay you for this, he said quietly. You repay me by doing for these kids what you did for me back in the day, Tank replied. By showing them there's always a way back no matter how far you've fallen. That's how this works. We lift as we climb. 6 months later, Tank pulled up to the Upton Boxing Center in the early morning hours. The sun was just beginning to rise over Baltimore, casting long shadows across the city streets. He'd made it a point to visit regularly since that fateful autumn day watching as Marcus transformed not just the lives of others, but his own life as well. Inside the gym, he found Marcus already at work, wrapping the hands of a teenage boxer who bore a striking resemblance to their younger selves. The change in Marcus was remarkable. He had regained his athletic build, his eyes sparkled with purpose, and his voice carried the confident authority of someone who had found his calling. "Keep your guard up, Jerome," Marcus was saying, demonstrating the proper technique. "Remember what we talked about. In the ring and in life, you've got to protect yourself while working toward your goals." The young fighter nodded earnestly, absorbing every word from his mentor. Tank leaned against the ropes, observing the scene. The gym was already filling up with early morning regulars, students getting their training in before school, working, adults squeezing in a session before heading to their jobs. Marcus had become a favorite among them all, his own story of redemption serving as a powerful inspiration. "Your footwork's improving," Marcus called out to a young girl working the speed bag. "But don't forget to do your homework before you leave. Can't fight in the tournament if those grades drop." The balance of tough love and genuine care in his voice reminded Tank of how Coach Ford had guided them. Keisha, Marcus's sister, came down from the apartment above, college textbooks in hand. She had transferred to a local university to be closer to family, and the pride in Marcus's eyes whenever he spoke about her academic achievements was unmistakable. James, now in his final semester of high school, had become one of the gym's regular volunteers, helping with the younger kids' programs. "Look who's here," Marcus grinned, spotting Tank. "The champ himself." The gym erupted in excited chatter as the young fighters realized who had arrived. But Tank noticed something different this time. They showed equal respect to both him and Marcus, recognizing two different kinds of champions. "Had to see how my investment's doing," Tank replied with a smile, embracing his friend. "Though from what I'm hearing, you're the one making all the investments now." It was true. Marcus had taken the second chance and multiplied it, creating opportunities for others just as Tank had done for him. The gym's youth program had expanded under his guidance, now including tutoring sessions, mentorship programs, and even job placement assistance for the older teens. "Remember that corner where you found me?" Marcus asked quietly as they watched the morning training sessions. "I drive past it every day, not to remind myself of how far I've fallen, but to remember how far I've come. And to remember that sometimes rock bottom is just the foundation for building something new." Tank nodded, understanding perfectly. "You've done more than just come back, brother. You've created a path for others to follow." The morning sun now streamed through the gym's windows, highlighting the busy scene before them. Young fighters training, students studying, lives being shaped and changed. Coach Ford joined them, placing a hand on each man's shoulder. "You know what makes me proudest?" the veteran trainer asked. "Not the championships or the victories. It's watching my boys become men who lift others up. That's the real legacy of this gym." As if to punctuate his words, the young fighter Marcus had been training earlier landed a perfect combination on the heavy bag, his technique showing the results of patient mentoring. Marcus called out words of encouragement, his voice carrying the weight of experience and the lightness of hope. "Full circle," Tank said softly, watching his friend in his element. "This is what it's all about." Marcus turned to him with a grateful smile. "No, brother. This is just the beginning." Dear friends, if you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel, like, and activate the notification bell. Oh, I almost forgot. Leave a rating from 0 to 10 for this story in the comments.